Today, I am really excited to have Sam Hales of the Saratoga Group with us. Sam has a hair over 4,000 lots. I think the really fun thing about Sam, beyond being a family man just like me, is that he bases his strategy around turnaround projects, but on a much bigger scale than what Ian and I do. So, Sam, I am so excited to have you here today.
I love the enthusiasm, Brian. No, I'm super excited to be here and big fan of the message you're getting out there and just what you're doing. So,
Hey, honored to hear that from you, man. You are a mover and shaker in this space, so the flattery is mutual, I guess. Sam, like I was saying before I hit record, this season I want to help people push through plateaus, whether that's they've never bought before or whether they've bought and they want to get to that next level and they feel stuck. And like I mentioned before, and like I've mentioned on the podcast, I really think it revolves around two things. Number one, strategy. They have a faulty strategy. Either they're not listening to the market and what the market's telling them, or they want numbers that don't actually exist in areas that don't exist, or they're just going about it wrong. Or number two, they have poor underwriting. And I don't mean they can't do the math. I mean, they lack the vision to pair with that. And Sam, what compelled me to get you on ASAP was a story you recently told on LinkedIn, which we'll get to in a minute. But before we do that, I kind of want to give you the mic and let you catch everyone who's never met you before up to speed on your company, what you guys specialize in, and just a little bit more about yourself.
Awesome, Ryan. Happy to do it. So, started in real estate. I'm going to make this super fast, but started about 11 years ago, full time. I was in tech before that. Kind of identified single family homes as a probably a place where we could find some good yield and pretty good safety. And this was right after the crash, and started a fund buying single family homes. Did that for a few years and then was kind of trying to find the next thing. And I wanted something, I was focused on cash flow, and I wanted something that would do well in cycles, right? So up and down markets. And it didn't take me too long. When I said too long, probably 6 months, but to figure out that mobile home parks is probably where we wanted to be. Bought our first one in 2017, and but we only bought one that year. So really, we in 2018, 19, and 20, we've accelerated, and we bought. We're over 4,000 pads. We bought 2,300 pads last year in 2020. We're hoping to do another 2,500 to 3,000 this year. And like you said, we're focused on turnaround projects like you guys are. I mean, that's the value, right? I mean, I tell that to people all the time. They're like, oh, they're getting super expensive. Okay, if you look at it on a cap rate basis, they are. But if it's half full and the rents are 50% below market, like it doesn't really matter if it went from an 8 cap to a 6 cap, because it's all about what are you doing with that income? It's the vision, right, that we talk about. So anyway, that's kind of what we're doing. We love the Southeast. We're in the Midwest as well, Texas, Kansas, places like that. But just super, super excited to be in this space at this time.
I could not agree with you more. I said on the episode about underwriting that I see this happen all the time. If you want to buy stuff at an 8 cap and you're frustrated that you can't find anything above a 6, you're missing the point that the in-place cap rate is largely irrelevant if you're buying stuff that's below market in their rents, or there's other operational efficiencies you can bring to the table. And that plays into the vision piece. And beyond just not psyching yourself out over the numbers itself, knowing who you are, what you can and can't do, can allow you to quickly say yay or nay on a deal. And in this market, haste is everything. I mean, there are 2 deals that I lost out on this week alone. One of them I got outbid to oblivion. I mean, I wasn't close. And which happens.
Yeah.
Which happens. It's to be expected. But the other one, I actually outbid the guy who beat me by $100,000, actually 110 to be exact. And the reason why I lost that is because the other guy had heard about the deal a week before I did. So even though I moved relatively quickly, I got my offer in front of them too late. The other guy had a week longer to build rapport. And not only that, once you ink the paper, it doesn't matter. It's now riskier for that seller to go, oh no, like, I'm going to back out here and take the other guy for another 100 grand. It happens. So in other words, haste wins deals. So I think this is the perfect segue, Sam, for you to tell that story about on LinkedIn about how you put on hard money, like out of the gate.
Oh man. First time I've ever done this. I don't know if I'll ever do it again, but it was just the situation, right? And I'll share it. So we own about 110 pads in Greenville, South Carolina. Greenville, right? I mean, front page of the Wall Street Journal last weekend, like what's going on there? It's a hot market. Labor's doing great, tons of influx, new net immigration. And anyway, so we bought this other portfolio. We've only had it like 5 months. And in fact, when I got the call, it was about three months that we'd had it. But it was doing everything we anticipated and more. And so what happened is our manager there, her dad, was a mobile home park owner in that market. He'd sold a couple of years ago, but he had his HVAC guy over at his house putting in a new HVAC system, and he knew that he owned some mobile home parks. And he said, "Hey, Tim, you ever going to sell those mobile home parks?" And Tim said, "Oh, matter of fact, like these guys just showed up from New Jersey. They toured the parks, and I've got an offer." He's like, "I'm signing today when I get home." And Richard says, "You're not selling to them. You're going to sell to Sam." He's like, "Well, who's Sam?" He's like, "I'm going to call him right now." So the HVAC guy is there at his house. He calls me. He's all, "I've got Tim here. Hey, Tim, this is Sam." And he's got, "Tim, how many pads do you have?" And he's like, "I don't know. I think it's like 150. And he said that they were going to sign. And so, I started asking the questions, right? Like how many lots, where are they located? What kind of clustering do we have? Are there homes on them? How many are occupied? Like how much are you charging? It was apparent pretty quickly that they were easily $250 a month below market. And I'm talking, in Greenville, South Carolina, their average rent was about $500 a month for a home on a lot. Right? I mean,
market lot rent's almost that.
Yeah. I mean, so when I say 200, like easily $250 a month below market. So I'm talking to him and I'm kind of running these numbers. I'm like, we're at like a 14 cap, and of course that's gross. That's with those homes. But like you said, we're not going to charge $150 on the lot rent. We're going to reallocate that and away from the home rent, and we're going to put the lot rents at 400, right? I mean, just kind of the stuff we'd already done in that market. And I said, "Tim, I know these other guys have already seen these," and I was like, "I want to buy these in the worst way, and I will pay you same price. Like, what do I need to do?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know." He's like, really, I'm like, "Tell you what, I'm gonna wire you $100,000. And it's going to show up in your bank account first thing in the morning, and then we can figure out the deal. Like, what do you think?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, that'll work." And so, next day he had $100,000 in his account. I'd never met him. We didn't have a contract, obviously. It took us probably 3 weeks to get there. But Ricky, who was his friend and who I'd gotten to know a little bit, there was trust there, right? So that was part of it. But yeah, I mean, it was a gamble. It was definitely a gamble. But I felt like I was willing to lose that money, knowing that the deal had 20 to 30 times as much value in it if I could just make it happen. And it didn't seem like there was any other way to do it, to get it done. So
what's funny is I'm pretty confident I know that group from New Jersey.
Really? Okay.
Yes, I do. I do. I'm pretty
Okay.
confident I know who
Okay.
that. And
Yeah.
I don't know if they're friends of mine, but I don't know if they listen in. But if they listen in, they're going to be like, "That's Sam. I'm going to get you next time."
Yeah.
So there's two things that I want to drill in on a little bit. First off, you knew what to ask. That's really, really important. So in other words, while you're on the call, you have quite literally a matter of hours, and you're on the phone. You know what to ask, and you can then pair that with the vision in your underwriting, which is perfect, right? So in other words, it gets you to the point where you're comfortable enough to literally wire someone $100,000 with nothing on paper. So you are also incredibly bold. I don't think I would ever have the courage. I'm a guy who literally dropped everything and moved into a mobile home, and I wouldn't wire someone $100,000 like that. That's crazy. And then number two, Sam, you were even in that position because of local relationships. So you may be on a bigger scale nationally, being in the Midwest and the Southeast, but that doesn't mean that you have skirted out time with people to build local relationships that have their ear to the ground, so you can beat out some group that happens to literally show up at that front door.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Ryan, I think that's so. Tell you what, when we were in the single family space, and if we're not learning from our mistakes, what are we doing, right? I mean, we made some real mistakes on that side. One of them was I didn't value brokers, right? I was like, who are these guys? They're friction in the process. I don't need them. Yeah, you do. And when I say needing brokers, like there's market players. Like Ricky isn't a broker, but he's a market player. Like he knows he's the fire chief in Greenville. He knows everybody, right? And so what like you said, you've got to build relationships with those people, so that they can trust you and know that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. You're going to deliver. You're going to help them look good. He needed that because Tim was his friend. I mean, they work together. Tim does work for him, but he was a friend as well. And the last thing he wants to do is refer somebody to him that ends up, falling on their face and not being able to deliver. So just to that point, it's funny. We're in Greenville, South Carolina. We're in Greenville, North Carolina as well. That's a big market for us. And when you talk about kind of, the vision or understanding the market, we saw that market. In fact, we were looking at some of the data from Datacom and looking at areas where we felt like the lot rents were artificially low relative to, comparable housing, 3-bedroom apartments, let's say. And Greenville, North Carolina kind of jumped out at us. And so we were able to find a local broker. Again, same scenario. He knows all the sellers, but he didn't know buyers. So which seems weird to most people that are trying to get in there. Like, what do you mean? There's thousands of buyers. Like every time a listing comes up, like there's just so many people bidding on it. That's true if you're looking at it kind of from this national level, and you've got these national brokers that they know all the buyers. But if you're in a local market, his first words to me, and of course this was 2 years ago, and it's changed a little bit, but when we got a hold of him, his first words to me were, I've got all these trailer parks and nobody in Greenville, North Carolina wants to buy a trailer park, right? So he's got all these local sellers, no local buyers. And so in a situation like that, we just let the broker know, hey, we're going to take care of you. We're going to pay your commission. You go contact these different sellers, let them know that you've got a buyer in hand. They don't have to pay you anything. I mean, what's there to lose, right? And so with that guy in particular, we're actually closing 2 more next week. Those will be number 6 and number 7 of the mobile home parks that we've bought in that market. And I think it's just, again, we learned that from experience, kind of doing the wrong thing in the single family space, and kind of took that learning and tried to do it better when we came into this space.
Yeah, we traditionally buy from cold calling and mailers and off market type stuff, but I've bought, I think, about a quarter or a third of my mobile home parks have been from brokers. So even though I'm a guy who buys value add stuff, there is deal flow with brokers. And while the national guys are a lot harder to buy from because some of them have 20,000 buyers in their email list, it's insane. That doesn't mean you can't do business with them. I've done business in the last 6 months with 2 national brokers, and I'm just this little guy. And I'll tell you why, because if you deliver value to them, if you overpay them, if you have to show them that you're legit, to build that trust and friendship with them, occasionally they're going to have something that just fits exactly who you are, which again comes back to that strategy piece. Since we have a very unique niche strategy, Ian and I, and we've built these relationships with these brokers over the years. When they find something that hits the bullseye, they're going to call me and that's it. And that's amplified, like you said, on the local level. A lot of times you'll find local real estate agents, local small market commercial guys who do everything from office to retail to, and then they'll occasionally get a mobile home park because they just know everybody in the market, but they don't know those national people and they're not going to spend a ton of time on it because they don't have that database that a national group would have. So I love that strategy. I do the exact same thing. And anybody listening in, the lesson there is if you have a good, strong strategy and you've already picked the markets that you want to be in, there are local folks you can really gas up those relationships. You can really spend time in those relationships and it won't be immediate, but boy, will they reward you.
Yeah, for sure. Because like you said, I mean, a national broker, they're going to get some of these weird value add ones that they can't really send to their normal buyer pool, right? I mean, if I'm a broker right now, the hardest thing is getting those listings, right? Because there's tons of buyers, but occasionally they're coming across this stuff and they get stuff that's a little weird, or it's in a market that, you know, maybe most people coming out of Frank and Dave's Academy just aren't going to buy or whatever. But for you and I, if we know those local markets and we've performed for them before, yeah, they're going to call us. So it's key.
Well, I haven't done $100,000 with no contract, but I have one time to buy a mobile home park, showed up to a guy's house and wrote him a check in exchange to sign the contract. So it was non-refundable at signing. So we have done that. And we've been under contract and bought ourselves another 30 days of due diligence with $100,000 hard. So I have done that. I've never done anything without a contract. So kudos to you, man. You have a courage the size of a football field to do that.
Guaranteed, right? If he'd taken my money and gone to Mexico, I probably wouldn't be talking about it. But anyway, no, I mean, it was a risk. It definitely was a risk. But I just sat there and thought, there's only one way I'm going to get this deal, and is it worth? And I kind of sent the wire and said, I might not, that might turn into nothing. I got to be okay with that. I mean, that's really what it came down to. So.
I love that, because so many folks that I talk to, I feel like the biggest reason they don't get started in this space is because of fear management. And I think you'll agree with me when I say this. It's not that people like you and I are not fearful. You were definitely scared when you hit the send button. The difference is, in the many years you've had in real estate, Sam, you, like me, have developed fear management.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Sam, tell me, I'm going to speak for folks that I know are listening in going, okay, please ask the obvious question. 2,300 pads in a year. Tell us, what's your secret, or at least how did that happen? That's amazing.
Well, part of what happened is we picked up a large portfolio. Typically, Ryan, we're not going to pay attention to those. I mean, there was one you probably saw. It came up in Atlanta a few months ago. Well, maybe just 2 months ago, and we underwrote it and sent in our offer, and and we were low by like 50%, right? But it's like, I mean, those were it's just what happens is you get to a certain size, and all of a sudden the big PE groups and all that, I mean, they'll buy that stuff, right? Even if it has a little bit of hair on it or whatever. And so typically those portfolios just don't make any sense. But this was an off-market transaction. It was about 1,100 pads, 2 in Kentucky, 1 in Illinois, 1 in Iowa. So 4 communities, all big, nice communities, and $18,000 a pad.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and one of them, this 384 pads in Rockford, Illinois, had Illinois EPA all over them, and the district attorney's office. I mean, there was some hair on that deal. And actually, maybe I'll come back in a few weeks. We can have another session. But we actually convinced the city to get us on public water there. So that's kind of a cool story too. But anyway, so that happened, and we know that this year it's going to be way more challenging because we're probably not going to find a portfolio like that again. Like, how do we replicate that? And so we've just decided, look, we're boning up on our acquisitions team. We have 3 people on the ACT team now, and they are underwriting deals all day long, all 3 of them, and just pounding deals. And so we've got 11 in contract, and about, 5 other accepted LOIs. I mean, we're just one at a time, just kind of like churning and trying to get through it and finding these deals. So that's what we're doing. It's a lot of work. And I've talked to other groups, right, that are kind of maybe where we're at, and they've, for the most part, said, you know what, we're not doing that anymore. Like, that's too much brain damage. We're just going to buy larger portfolios. But we look at it and say, there's tremendous value in buying them one at a time. I mean, let's take Greenville, North Carolina, where, we now have 7 communities, or we're about to have 7 communities. Even if we hadn't fixed them up and we're bringing in new homes, and if we just amass that, like, that's worth, and then we could go sell that for twice what we bought it for, just because it's now 600 lots all in one market, right? So there's tremendous value in doing them one at a time and then aggregating. It's a standard roll-up strategy. We see it throughout all sorts of different different business types, but there's not a lot. It's like one of the last frontiers, at least in real estate, is mobile home parks. I mean, right? I mean, you look. In fact, I brought that up the other day, and this person was like, "Well, I know another space." I'm like, "Tell me what it is." They're like, triple net lease post offices. I'm like, what? Like, I thought I was in a small niche. Like, that sounds super small. But I kind of looked into it. I'm like, yeah, there might be something there. But the point being, yeah, I mean, it's hard to find. And there's still an opportunity. I think there's a window that's closing, but we're just trying to pick up what we can to make sense while it's still open.
Well, Sam, I love it. I agree. I think this space is going to be completely different in 5 years. I would not be surprised if it was completely different in 2. Just the amount of folks who are willing to literally go door to door and knock on doors. I thought I was crazy going door to door. And the amount of cold calls I get today, it is just, it's a multiple of the cold calls I used to get. And I hate to say it, but a lot of the cold calls I get now are incredibly unpleasant, which just can make it better in some regards and harder in other regards. And just by replacing mom and pops who just they like cash because they don't like to report stuff and they don't like to keep their books, just by the sheer fact that you take over, you do nothing different to a property but collect the money and pay the taxes, and all of a sudden your property increases in value. Like, it's just going to be different. Now, that's not to say that there's not going to be another wave of opportunities. I think that there's always going to be plays in this space, but yeah, I am just like you. I like to plant my flag in a city that I really like, and buy them one at a time, have one employee, and merge management and grow from there. And it's worked very well for us. And you've done that on a much, much higher level. But we also work like crazy, and you literally have 3 full-time people on your acquisitions team, which is crazy to me. And for those listening in who aren't anywhere close to where you're at with 4,000 pads and growing, Sam, what advice do you have for folks to learn how to be different in their strategy and to develop a strategy? And what would you say to folks from there on how to apply vision based from that strategy into their underwriting?
Great question. So Ryan, when I was starting to get into the space, I probably, like a lot of people, listened to podcasts. And at the time, right, this was like 4 years ago, it felt like everybody was saying the same thing. And it was kind of, what's coming out of the Frank and Dave Academy, and like, you don't want park-owned homes, and generally you didn't want the Southeast. Like, that was kind of something that was out there. And so I started looking at some of these assumptions, and I was like, I don't know that these make sense. Like, to me, why is buying park-owned homes a bad strategy? That's our favorite strategy. We love park-owned homes, right? Because what happens, and especially right now, like if I was starting out in this market right now, what I would do is I would look for communities that have a bunch of park-owned homes, because all of a sudden your buyer pool goes down, and then develop a strategy to monetize the park-owned homes. So I'll give you an example. We just got a signed LOI. I think we're signing the PSA Monday. 70 lots in Fayetteville, North Carolina. It's basically a brand new subdivision. When I say brand new, like, the guy built it and brought 2019 and 2020 single wide Claytons in there, and gorgeous. And of course he bought the homes 12 to 24 months ago. What's happened to home prices in 12 months, right? I mean, they're like, to get that same home shipped, installed, skirted, and all the rest, I mean, you're $12,000 to $15,000 more than you were 18 months ago. So we're at $80,000 an occupied pad for basically a brand new home, fully occupied and fully rented. So to him, he's like, well, I've got $40,000 in these homes, or maybe it's 45. So I'm selling these lots for 35. He's like, I'm getting a great deal. We're looking at that saying, if I have to bring those homes in right now, which are super hard to get, by the way, and set them up and skirt them and all the rest, like, it's going to take me a year to do that, just because it's so hard to get homes anyway. And then at the end of it, it's probably going to cost me 55 to 60 to get all that set, delivered. So if I can get filled lots in Fayetteville for $20,000, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that all day long. So another one, we just went into escrow, Amarillo, Texas, 124 lots, and beautiful community, direct build. Don't you love direct build, right? I mean, the city owns the streets. They're charging the water, the sewer. Like, okay, cool. No losses there. Like, we'll put an automatic little premium when we know we don't have to bill back. It's half occupied, but all the lots are full other than 2. And we've walked every one of those homes. Half of them are double wide, and they just need to be mostly like paint and carpet. And so I look at that and I'm like, there's a tremendous opportunity here to go fix up some homes, and just because otherwise, if they were actually empty pads, like, how long is it going to take me to get homes shipped to Amarillo? Like, I don't even know. I don't, like, where is that, the Waco plant, and Clayton's Waco plant? I mean, whatever. But it's like, it's going to take a year before you can get anything meaningful in that market or shipped to that market. If you've got inventory that's there, it's just a matter of getting a crew in there and getting these things turned and getting your income way up. So if that's what I would say, I would focus on communities with a bunch of park-owned homes or maybe empty homes, and like, get, roll up your sleeves, get dirty, and like, get those things filled up.
So for those listening or watching in, what Sam said there was just utterly brilliant. And here's why. Because his strategy, when he saw something, he said, that's it. So he recognized it incredibly fast, and then could do the mental math incredibly fast, and then go, get it under contract. Send the guy $100,000 if you have to. That is where you have to be today to compete. And I couldn't agree more with you, Sam. I love park-owned homes, and I love that it bothers people. And it should bother people. It is high risk. It is tons of effort. It is liabilities out the wazoo. You have to have labor. You have to be incredibly cognizant of things like inflation on materials, like lumber prices are insane. But the reward can be mind-boggling. We bought a 40-lot community just outside of Charlotte with all park-owned homes, direct build, almost everything. And I've got to say, it was brutal the first 6 months, but now almost every single home is a tenant-owned home. And that has got to be, if not my best performing property, one of, because you get to pick who comes in. And if you have all the local relationships like we do, because we literally live in Charlotte, we can look at an opportunity that is very rough. And Sam, I'll tell you, that property day one, like the next morning after closing, I showed up and there was a guy walking around with an ankle monitor and brand new clothes on. Well, I had to go confront and be like, hey, which one do you live at? And he's like, I don't live here. I'm like, that sounds pretty safe. So and the property you and I were talking about that you bought in Atlanta, where the crime when you took over was insane. I mean, I remember driving through that when that was marketed, and I didn't even want to get out of my car. And I heard a rumor that someone who looked at it got mugged while he was viewing the property. Like, that is opportunity nowadays. Like this idea that there's all tenant owned home stuff that's going to be value add. Like, what's value add doesn't mean you raise the rent. Value add means you repave the roads, or you cut back the trees, or you bring some real value to people. You bring in new residents who really love what you do and what you got going on. So, Sam, I love all of that. I am so glad I had you on. Sam, tell us, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Right, cut out a little bit. Can you say that last part one more time?
Sam, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, you cut out a little bit. I missed that last part.
Sam, honestly, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh, awesome. Yeah, probably LinkedIn. Sam Hales, Saratoga Group on LinkedIn. Email is sam@saratogagroup.com. Those are a couple good ways, and always looking to network, meet new people. Ryan, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. I mean,
yeah,
it's like funny, right? I mean, with COVID, and you just feel. I mean, I feel like I know you.
Yeah.
But anyway, it'd be good to meet in person. I'm sure we'll do it one of these days. So.
Well, Sam, honored that you joined us. Thank you so much for coming. And I will drop all of your contact information in the show notes. So y'all, thanks for tuning in. Sam, thanks again for joining us.